Good afternoon. I'm Munira O'Donnell, and I lead the food initiative at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And it is my absolute privilege to be hosting this afternoon's session on regenerating nature with the circular economy. Now, as we heard in the earlier sessions this morning, and as we all know, regenerating nature is a key principle of the circular economy. Along with eliminating waste and pollution, circulating products and materials, regenerating nature is absolutely vital to the long term of our economy. And there are many ways in which individuals and organizations are working to regenerate nature all around the world. But the way in which we grow, produce, and consume food is one of the most powerful ways in which we can regenerate natural systems and help our landscapes thrive. We know that our current food system is broken. It is currently responsible for about a third of greenhouse gas emissions and about half of human-induced biodiversity loss. We know that natural landscapes are being degraded to make way and space for the food that needs to be produced for our growing population. But it doesn't have to be like that. So over the next 75 minutes, we're going to go on a journey together. We will look at why regenerating our natural systems is so important, hear how food can be a vital part of that, and the way in which food can help reverse biodiversity loss. We will hear from farmers already making the transition, and we're going to talk to people from local government, from business, and from across the world. But before we meet our first guests, and to put us in the right frame of mind, we're going to head off to a really beautiful farm called Gathelney Farm, which is in Somerset, in England, which is where I currently live. And we're going to meet farmer Fred and his on-site baker, Rosie. Not only is this an inspirational story of how a different food system can work, but for me, I think it reminds us of the ethereal beauty of a farm and how deeply connected to the land our food system actually is.
Can farming like this feed the world? I firmly believe it can, if not it does. But you have to change the food system in order to be able to make the decisions you want to on farm. My grandfather moved here in the 50s and was part of this wave of industrialisation of agriculture, and his domain was pigs. He was part of that focus on ripping out hedgerows and putting stock inside. And my aunt ran it for 30 years until we moved back in 2007. The business we inherited was quite deeply entrenched in the kind of big food system. So we were producing commodities, wheat, barley, oilseed rape, and selling them on global markets, which have really nothing to do with how much it costs to produce a ton of wheat here in Somerset. Yeah, I'm going to do that bag as well for them both. The first 5 years we were entrenched in the industrial system. The middle 5 years we were really thinking about what was really going on. Why was there this yield plateau? My mindset shifted from still trying to be an industrial farmer by fixing soil fertility and by considering the soil biology, to then seeing what was really going on in the soil and realizing that the two systems were just fundamentally incompatible. The process of transformation for me was just about lots and lots of simple, small decisions that all add up to, 15 years later, a farm that is totally different. And that also led us to start really thinking about what food system we were involved in as well. We have a 4-year rotation, 2 years of diverse lays running into 2 years of arable cropping. And half of the arable cropping goes to Southwest bakeries, including Rosie's bakery on the farm, and the other half goes to feed the pigs, which are a really important part of the fertility part of the system. Imagine I carry some grain to Rosie's mill, she mills it, I take the bran from the mill and I feed it back to the pigs, and then she makes a sausage roll. with the meat from the pigs and puts it in the pastry that's made from the grain. I mean, that's just like, that would never happen in an industrialized system.
I hope you enjoy that. I really love that story, and there is a food system there that we can see at small scale that I think all of us on stage are wanting to see across the globe. So I'm delighted to be joined on stage by 4 people who are all working to support a more regenerative food system. So I'd really like to welcome Philippe from Climate Farmers, Ashley, who has joined us all the way from the city of Guelph in Canada, Elsie, who joins us from Rwanda and is here to represent the African Circular Economy Network, and Elisa, who is our resident Finn, who joins us from Citra. So welcome. So let's kick off this discussion with you, Lisa. So Citra recently published the Tackling Roots Causes report, which really does emphasize the role the circular economy can play in halting and partly reversing biodiversity loss by 2035 across a range of different sectors, including food. And as we're focused on food today, can you share with the audience really the role that food and agriculture play in all of this?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reniera, and good afternoon for you all. Yeah, I'm Liisa Pietala from Citra, and we did published for a year ago with Vivid Economics the global study tackling root causes of biodiversity loss. And the quick question there was that how we could use circular economy to halt biodiversity loss and reverse it. And agriculture was, of course, important sector. The study touched with forestry, buildings and construction, and also textiles and fibers. And we know that land use, it can cause severe effects for biodiversity when we are producing food, but we have also many, many solutions. And this was also recognized last December in UN biodiversity conference in Montreal, where actually agriculture and forestry, they had their own target 10. So there is hope if we just can do things right. And in this study of tackling root causes, there were 3 solutions which were studied and modeled. So the first one was alternative proteins, meaning that the meat consumption would fall 50% and dairy production 67%. And then there were food waste per capita, which should fall 50%. And then the third option was regenerative farming practices, which would cover 60% of arable land and 18% of pasture land. So by these means, with other sectors, there were really very good results, because by these means we could halt the biodiversity loss and reverse it to the level which we had already at 2000, and this could be happened by 2035. So there is really hope, and if we think about these management practices, so I would say that that these regenerating farming practices we could even have a more ambitious aim for that, more than 60%, because I think that farmers can really adapt these practices, of course, based on where they are in the world, based on the local conditions. But there is a lot of good management practices like crop cover and reduced tillage and water management and many of these good soil management practices. And I would like to say that in this context, we should not forget grazing animals, because these animals, they need, of course, feed, and grass is very good feed because it also make very good things for the soil, because deep-rooting grasses, they really ameliorate, improve the structure of soil, and of course animals will deliver manure and biodiversity. So I would just add that let's keep animals in this context too. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Now, Philippe, I know that you agree 100% with all the things that Lisa has been saying, but you are working with farmers across Europe to help them transition to this food system that will help reverse biodiversity loss, improve soil health, and be more regenerative. Can you just share with the audience, what is it that you are doing to support farmers?
I think the core thing is essentially that we are the voice of farmers, especially of the regenerative farmer movement in Europe. And all of this started in 2017 for me, when I was essentially planning on retire on the Portuguese mountainside and start a community. And we acquired 20 hectares of land. And that's when I started looking into regenerative agriculture and was amazed that it's the solution to so many of our issues, right? And I think by now I'm very happy that the awareness for this has risen. But back then, nobody was speaking about regenerative agriculture. But there's studies from the 80s and 90s from Wageningen already talking about carbon sequestration, biodiversity increase. So I tried to look for regenerative farmers back then, and I found 60 farmers in the whole of Western Europe, which were practicing regenerative practices. So I visited them, I stayed with them, and I worked with them, and I tried to understand what they need in order to do their job, in order to be stewards of the land, why they think it's not scaling, and how we could support them. And based on these conversations, we essentially started Climate Farmers, because the answers were the same. It was 60 farmers in 9 countries, and they almost all said the same. And the biggest issue is an issue which we carry the responsibility for as a society as a whole, which is it's not sexy to be a farmer. Young people don't want to get into farming. And the biggest demographic that we're seeing for farmers which are transitioning towards regenerative agriculture is farmers like the one in the video, which is usually people in their 30s or 40s. Because the transition towards regenerative agriculture is hard. And it takes 5 to 10 years. And the average age of farmers in the European Union is 58 years old. Now, I wouldn't want to go on that journey when I'm 58 years old. I want to retire in 5 years. I'm not going to change my practices drastically. So we started storytelling. We started sharing the stories of the farmers. We were working on a movie. Then Kiss the Ground came out. I'm sure many of you have seen it. If you haven't, watch it. It's incredible. So society started realizing there seems to be something here. So that part was done, but there was still no community for farmers, and there was no way where they could learn about regenerative practices, because still no European agricultural university is teaching regenerative agriculture. So we built a farmer-to-farmer learning platform where farmers can learn from each other how to apply regenerative practices, where they can compare notes with each other. We organize farm visits where they can see in practice how it's working. And we started building a consulting agency with farmer-backed consultants, because a lot of people nowadays claim to be regenerative agriculture consultants because it's hip, but they don't know what they're doing. But farmers can spot this, and they can tell us who are the good ones, and we can associate with that. And then the other part is what we need is transition finance. When you transition towards regenerative agriculture, you will have a bit of crop loss in the first few years. That's just the reality. I always compare it a bit to like a drug junkie that's trying to get off heroin. You will have a bit of a hard time in the first few years. And that's essentially what's the situation with our soil is, unfortunately, as well. And that's where we provide farmers with transition finance through carbon credits. We are trying to establish biodiversity credits. Still hard to get payment for biodiversity, but essentially we're monitoring what's going on in the farms, and we're trying to reward farmers for that work. And that's essentially the whole package.
Thank you, Philippe. Now, you working really hard across Europe. Elsie, you are based right down south in my home continent of Africa. Why don't you share with us, how is this playing out on the African continent?
Well, thank you so much, Renier. In Africa, there is a growing and application of the regenerative agricultural practices. I would say that in Africa, we have the predominant subsistence farming in Africa. And when you look at how the subsistence farmers are applying regenerative agricultural practices, they are doing this, first of all, because that's how they have been traditionally doing their farming. Practices like crop rotation, practices like intercropping, because that's how they get their food. But these are the low input requiring the labor less intensive practices. But as the years go by, we can see that there are also the growing recognition and application of other input requiring practices, such as agroforestry, that will require costs for seedlings, agroforestry seedlings, and other inputs, management practices. So we can see that there is a growing trend of the application of these input requiring, cost requiring practices. Also, when you look at the numbers of the farmers that are adopting these practices, it will be mostly the farmers that have had an exposure, training to regenerative agriculture practices, which is an indication that actually the farmers in the global south, they will need the capacity to actually transition from the traditional way of farming to regenerative farming in search for the nutritional security, other multiple benefits that might come with that. If they grow, for example, agroforestry trees, they'll have other benefits like fruit. They'll have other benefits like timber that is grown on their farm that can be sold. So these are the drivers of the adoption of the regenerative agricultural practices. So there are other preconditions that I will say for the regenerative agricultural practices, depending on the various landscapes in Africa. For example, in the tropical Africa, we have some mountainous, hilly landscapes that will not only require regenerative agricultural practices to be implemented, but we have some other preconditions, like these hilly landscapes will be prone to soil erosion, will be prone to landslides, and therefore they will need some mechanical structures, for example, terracing, radical terracing, progressive terracing, for them to actually sustain these regenerative agricultural practices so that the soil will be regenerated, but on a structure that is actually stable, on the land that is stable. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. I think what I find really interesting about this conversation, the more I have it, is the number of different drivers as to why farming practices need to change. It's financial, it's environmental, it's to stabilize the land, it's social, it's providing jobs. It's so interesting. But actually, let me bring you in here because you come from a city. And I think, there's what role do cities have to play? But Guelph has really taken this agenda and taken the sort of regenerative agriculture bull by the horns, so to speak. Why is it so important within your city?
Thanks, Renera. It's wonderful to be here, everybody. So I represent Guelph Wellington, which is a city within a large agricultural region. And like many governments here today, we're tasked with big, ambitious climate goals alongside supporting a thriving economy. So for us, we see regenerative agriculture as a win-win. So why not be able to grow food while also grow carbon sinks? Guelph Wellington's home to 2,500 farms, just to give some context, about 500,000 acres of land. And agriculture is our biggest emitter in terms of all of our economic sectors. So not only is there a profound opportunity to reduce emissions through agriculture, but there's also a great opportunity to address the other wicked problems like biodiversity loss and also with water quality and quantity. So we see our role as government, we sit as a local government specifically as sitting at kind of the nexus of a whole bunch of really key food system stakeholders. And it's our job to translate these big global goals into local solutions. So we're doing that by supporting climate-friendly agriculture through programs for farms. And through that program, we're seeing not only really hopeful regenerative solutions that are place-based and can potentially be scaled out to other local farms, but we're also developing better relationships with our local agricultural community, which is really important for regional governments. Secondly, we kind of see our region as an urban-rural living lab. So on the one hand, we want to support the whole food system. So on the one hand, that's as simple as linking regenerative farms or farmers doing the right thing with like-minded food businesses in the ecosystem. And sort of downstream from agriculture, we see an opportunity to support all those other small and medium-sized food enterprises that want to do the right thing as well. So we have a business program that supports small and medium-sized food enterprises with education, knowledge sharing, procurement opportunities, and also funding to leverage innovation. And so far, we've launched about 80 circular products at this time. So in a very small bit of time, we've been able to launch a whole bunch of amazing products, mostly from food wasted in the value chain. But as we support regenerative farms, we'll be able to have more valuable inputs.
That's amazing. I'd love to actually dig into that a little more because I know you and I have had conversations on the phone, and I think Guelph is doing some incredible projects, and I'm sure the audience would love to hear you sharing just a little bit more information on a couple of those that you've been working on.
Sure. So on the ground, I'll start with the regenerative agriculture pilots. So we know that farmers in our region are interested in regenerative farming, but transition is, as Philippe mentioned, it's really hard. There's a financial cost, and it's really, in the context of inflation and environmental volatility, we really can't expect farmers to bear all of the risk. So we started the Experimental Acres pilot program, which is essentially a financial incentive program where any farm can submit a proposal for piloting a regenerative practice on a small piece of land so they can test that method. The goal, of course, of the program is to backstop risk. Like, that's the most important thing for us. And for the farmers, and also to provide a little bit of space for farmers to innovate, because you don't tend to see a lot of financial incentives for farmers to do the same things that other businesses get to do. We want to build a community of support for farmers. So just like Philippe said, we want to, encourage the sharing of best practices. And for us as a regional government, we want to capture those business cases that work, so we can help ladder up sort of our, not only our economic viability for farms, but also our ecological goals. So far, Experimental Acres has been piloted on 41 farms, about 150 acres. And we're seeing lots of amazing stories sort of coming through the program. And we look forward to sharing some of those stories at the end of the year with a final report.
Amazing, thank you. I'm going to come back to you, Philippe, because Ashley is talking very passionately about what Guelph is doing, and personally I think the work that they're doing is fantastic. You work a lot with European farmers. Kind of, from your perspective, what are the biggest policy changes that need to happen across Europe that can enable these sorts of activities to happen at scale?
I think first step would be to have more politicians like Ashley in Europe. That would be the thing I would love to have. Unfortunately, our experience on the ground are very different. Like, government is blocking regenerative agriculture in Europe de facto. It was quite interesting for me to see the speeches also this morning. And I always have to think, it sounds great on stage, like the statements are nice to make. The time is now. We need to do this. The urgency is there. And then the reality on the ground is, this is not the support that we're getting. This is not what we're seeing at all. So we need to start paying farmers for ecosystem services, right? Farmers want to take care of nature. They are stewards of the land, and they love the land.
Yeah.
But right now, they're living in a system which is only paying them for basically the harvest that they're getting based on quantity, not even based on nutrient density. And there's no payment for carbon sequestration. There's no payment for biodiversity increase. And there's no payment for saltwater storage capacity, even though it will save us massive issues with droughts, with flooding that already we're having. Right now, we're working with carbon credits. I don't like carbon credits. I hate the concept. But it's the only way how I can get farmers paid for storing carbon in the soil, by going to private companies that are willing to do this. Government is not helping with this. And quite on the contrary, we have right now the situation that we have the nature protection law, where we're working with the Club of Rome on to trying to push this through on the European level. And there's government blocking this, especially in my home country in Germany and in France, trying to claim that this is not for the farmers. The nature protection law would be the first step that we would have to start paying farmers for building biodiversity. And government is claiming that farmers are blocking this. In the end, it's Big Ag, it's Monsanto, it's Syngenta. This doesn't have an interest in this. And they unfortunately have a way too strong influence on the government that we're having in Europe. So my issue, unfortunately, is that government is not really representing the interest of farmers or the environment, but rather the interest of the big chemical fertilizer companies. And that's the reality that I'm seeing and that I'm facing. And if there's politicians in the audience here which are doing different things, I would love to speak to you. I haven't met a lot of them in Europe, unfortunately.
Thank you. I know we are absolutely. We are watching this whole agenda play out across Europe with real interest. I'm gonna leave European politics for a moment, and we're gonna swing back to Africa, because I know, Elise, you've been doing a lot of work with farmers on the ground in Africa. What kind of projects are you seeing taking off in this space?
Well, thank you so much for that. In Africa, I'm mainly involved in the eastern part of Africa. I've been doing projects in Rwanda, Kenya, DR Congo, and recently Burundi. So there is a missing link between the biodiversity and the agricultural landscapes when it comes to reporting to the UN Biological Diversity Convention. We don't have quite good metrics in the reporting. So what I have been doing was working with the government of Rwanda agency to actually get these biodiversity metrics in the report. Get the biodiversity metrics in the report, because working with the farmers, we give them the agroforestry trees to plant. They plant them. We regenerate the soil. We regenerate the nature, but we don't get this out and spoken. So that's what we have been doing. And on this agroforestry and other practices, other regenerative agriculture practices, have been doing research on how this can actually build the resilience of their farms that are affected by climate change shocks, by different other landslides I just mentioned a few moments ago. And what I have also been doing is valorization of waste and byproducts of tea and coffee processing. When we do coffee processing, there are some waste and byproducts that come out. For example, the coffee cherries will generate some waste. How does this go back to the soil to actually regenerate that soil and bring back the best coffee that we really want to get? So I have been working with the small and medium enterprises and other coffee factories to actually put these resources back to the soil, so that they can have multiple benefits and not continue to rely on the fertilizers that my colleague Philippe just mentioned. So those are a few initiatives I've been doing in the eastern part of Africa. Thank you.
I think what I love about that is, you've all talked about different farming and different contextual practices, and one of the things that we know is that regenerative agriculture is incredibly local. Now, Lisa, when Citra did the Tackling Root Causes report, it's a global report, but I know you have really strong views around the local context in relation to this subject.
Yes, that was a global study, and very good one. But when we think about these solutions, of course, food waste we can do, everybody all over the world. But when we are talking about these regenerative practices and also the impact of alternative proteins, when we are producing food, it really depends on the local conditions, pedoclimatical conditions. We have different growing seasons, different crops, because of we have like here in Finland, we have long winters and a small summertime, and so we need to adapt to that nature we have locally. And this is very, very crucial thing, that when we are applying these methods, we need to look locally. And we have strengths and we have challenges, and we need to have research, also national research, local research, farm level research, to adapt and to have indicators to show the road, and really to have these results of the different management. And I would say that if you are thinking the circularity in agriculture, we really need to shift that from global level to local level, and look the local energy and nutrients recycling. That's the key to go further to hard biodiversity and reverse this way we are going to. And I think that the circularity in agriculture, it's really important to adapt now. And we are working under the sky, under the different climate. We cannot predict weather conditions. So farmers are really cooperating with nature and all these climatical conditions, and they really taste the situation every day and try to do their best. And this is so local, and we need to understand that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I'm going to throw a bit of a controversial question out there. We get a lot of pushback from people saying that actually what we need is more intensive farming in smaller locations using less land. What would each of you say to that argument that actually, well, I'm going to guess that you all say we don't, but maybe you do. But that, we do get that we do get that challenge that actually we cannot feed a growing population unless we keep some intensive agriculture going. And I'd just love to hear your views on that. Elsie, I'll start with you.
Well, thank you. My question with that also is, if we cannot feed the world with organic or this regenerative agriculture, have we fed the world with this conventional agriculture? We haven't. If we haven't, then why don't we shift to this model that actually promises even multiple benefits, environmental benefits, other benefits that will come with this, that will feed our next generations. So that's how I would see this play. And I say this with an experience from Africa, where we actually see our lands being depleted more and more as days go by. And if we see that regenerative agriculture will regenerate our soil that have been depleted by the conventional agriculture, we would go for this, and we will feed the world even better than what we did with the conventional ones.
Thank you. Philippe, you're clapping away there. Do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, I think it's spot on, right? Like, conventional agriculture is not working out.
Yeah.
Like, we all know this, we all see this in Europe. Soils are depleting at a rapid rate. We have a harvest loss of farmers, which is, we are speaking with some corporates which have lost up to 40% of their harvest last year.
Yeah.
We had a winter drought in Europe this year. We have Eastern Germany becoming a desert slowly. Like, this is not the way forward. Like, we're basically driving towards a cliff on high speed, and people are saying, I don't know if we should brake like that. And that's just not going to work out. And on top of that, we have already studies that show that regenerative agriculture has, in the long run, higher yield because you have more climate change resilience, and just because you have a healthy ecosystem, which obviously leads to thriving plants. And so this is one of those arguments which is,
It's an argument that's out there. Yeah. What are your views, Lisa?
Yeah, I would like to add one concept. Sustainable water management, because due to the climate change we have desertification, but we have also excess water, so we really should focus also more and more on water management, how to drain our soils, how to irrigate our soils, and of course it is about soil structure, as you said also, so we need to have our soils function well so that water will infiltrate when it's time to infiltrate, and retain water when it's when is the crop growing ongoing. So, but this is very crucial issue. We should pay more attention on water management. I see that we don't do that, at least at the EU level.
Yeah. Ashley, is that a challenge that you get in Canada at all?
The water management piece?
No, that we still need an industrial approach to agriculture to be able to feed a growing population.
For sure. It's definitely a prevailing sort of idea. But I guess I would bring into the conversation the idea of food waste and like the conservative estimate that we waste 50% of the food that we grow. So it's not an issue of being able to grow enough as a whole. It's just we don't distribute it the right way. We don't manage it through the supply chain correctly. We have really insane ideas about what food needs to look like for us to buy it. So there's all kinds of ways that we need to address the waste and the leakage all through the supply chain.
And before we close this conversation, because we are going to come to an end in a moment, thinking about the audience in the room today and at the World Circular Economy Forum, I'd like each of you just to take a moment. What is your ask of the audience, and what can this forum do to be able to support a regenerative food system? And we'll just go in order of how we're seated, so we'll start with Philippe.
I think everybody can do their part, right? Whatever the organization is that you are working for, get up, stand up, do something, and try to work with whatever the context is that you are in order to make this transition happen. And if there is a lot of policy people in this room, then definitely there's a lot that you can do, because if we don't start shifting the common agricultural policy and we don't start shifting politics in the direction that farmers get rewarded for actually basically creating ecosystem services, we will not see the transition happen at that scale that we need in order to be able to actually get out of this climate crisis and the planetary crisis that we're in.
Thank you. Ashley.
Sure. My message would be for the policymakers, specifically supporting the rural regions. What we've heard from farmers when we tried to design our support program is farmers know their farms best. So don't prescribe. No solution can be prescribed to a farmer. You have to listen to a farmer. And then the second resounding piece of advice that comes from farmers that I constantly hear in my head is don't be annoying. And that's from we love paperwork in government. Farmers don't have paperwork. They don't have time for it. So, make policies and programs that are less cumbersome on the people that are growing our food.
Thank you. Elsie.
Yeah, I would say that the farming communities are willing to shift to regenerative agriculture as they have been doing with no support. And if they get support, they will do it even better. And with this, I would say that they need the capacity that is not just the books that you just talked about, not the books, and they need to be also recognized with the incentives. This could not be necessarily financial incentives, could be other incentives, but even the financial incentives should be there to reward them. Thank you.
And Lisa.
Yes, I would like to say that we should all get more knowledge about practical farming. Visit farms, look how your local food is produced, so then you will really appreciate it and you won't waste the food. That's my message. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to all our panelists for joining us on stage this afternoon. And in line with going to visit farms, we are going to go and visit 2 farms in Africa. We're going to go and visit 2 farms in Kenya with 2 very different approaches to circular and regenerative agricultural practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There are about 500 million smallholder farmers around the world who produce much of the world's food using only a small fraction of agricultural land and resources. Ironically, this is a group that suffers disproportionately from hunger, poverty, and impacts of climate change. So improving the way small farms are designed and managed so that they are more productive and profitable is a really important and powerful mechanism of dealing with many environmental and social challenges.
In Uganda here, not everyone has big chunks of land. We've changed many people's lives with this 1 acre because someone comes, they see this 1 acre, they go and either extrapolate or copy and paste. At home we used to farm. We had pigs, we had some chickens, we never bought food. So that's one thing I knew I would do. And that's how I start farming. So I start with 4 pigs. Actually, these animals paid my tuition for my master's degree. So when I get married, I came with my pigs. And then also the cost of living was quite high. I said to myself, for 9 months, I'm not going to buy Matoke and I'm going to grow it. And it was productive. And then someone gave my husband a cow. Someone gives me chickens. Then before I know it, I have 10 chicks. Then I have 100. Along the way, I travel to Kenya and I find this lady with this smart raised pond fish farm. And I'm like, So I'm like, I'm going to put them here. So that's on a 1/4 acre. And then also the pigs are on a 1/4 acre. Unknowingly, I'd cut this acre into 4 quarters. Cows, some chickens, pigs, banana plantation. And then the fish. The beauty with integrated farming, as you wait for one enterprise to produce food, there's another that is giving you something. I think it's the way to go. So in 2013, there was a long drought, very bad. And then the cost of maize bran was really costly. And I just imported my pigs. The pigs are my cash cow. I could not see my pigs dying of hunger. So I asked myself, it's drought season. Everyone is saying there's no maize. What do people in the desert do? That's how I came up with the hydroponics. This is a fodder unit. Right now we are using maize, but the best seed to use is barley. All cereals can sprout, but the best is barley. Now the science behind it is very, very simple. Germination, air, water, and warmth. The beauty about hydroponics, it's cheap. And a kilo of barley, you're going to get 6 kilos of fodder. Protein makes the biggest constitution of the feed. It's the most expensive in the animal feed. So we get the dung out. We leave it out for 6 to 8 hours because you want as many flies to come and lay eggs on them as possible. After the flies have laid eggs, we carry the dung, put it in a house and leave it there for 4 to 5 days. And in that time, the maggots are growing. And then also we have the black soldier flies. We still introduce them into the pig dung. The larvae start eating on the dung, slowly by slowly, until when they become big. And that's what we really want. It's 65% crude protein. So we wash them very well, disinfect them, and then we feed the chickens. The chickens love them. The dung, where the maggots come from, that dung, we pick it out, we introduce it in the earthworm tongue. The cow dung, we can use it twofold. We can put in an anaerobic digester to make biogas. And we put it in basins, and then when it rains, it seeps through. We also introduce microbes. So these microbes help us decompose the cow dung faster. We replenish the earthworm garden with the cow dung. After a month or two, it is purely soil, humus, very rich. We use it to grow vegetables, or we use it to replenish nutrients in our banana plantation. And then the vermi-liquid that comes from the earthworms is what we use as a pesticide and also as a fertilizer. Then we pick the earthworms, we feed the fish and the chickens. And the water that comes from the fish, we take it to the garden. And the cycle continues. I think a biodiverse farm is way better than a monocrop farm. You save on space, you save on the money. With that recycling of the dung, the urine, the water from the fish, you are replenishing the soils and you're saving the environment. We have to fit this world much as the population is increasing. And so all these technologies we need to use to fit in this small space have to be nature positive. If everyone paid attention to their environment, actually if we listen to nature, everything would be good.
What is so great about this circular, high productive farming system is that they solve so many different challenges in a holistic way. More profits, greater resilience, self-sufficiency, more nutritious produce, healthier animals, cleaner energy, less pressure on natural resources, and so on. All of this achieved through learning from nature, treating waste as food, and the appropriate application of technologies.
Agroforestry is the practice of either agriculture in forestry systems or forestry in agricultural systems, so that trees and crops are on the same piece of land for long periods of time. Farmers are able to produce diverse portfolios of food, allowing them to make more income rather than when they are relying on just one crop or one enterprise.
We decided to set up agroforestry because we wanted a food production system that produces superior quality, enhances soil and sequesters as much carbon as possible, and enhances, of course, biodiversity. It was really when we first went to Brazil and discovered the advantages of syntropic agroforestry over any other agroforestry. We realized a lot of the crops that they were using in Brazil are also in Africa. And so we knew we could do it here and just slightly change it ever so slightly just to fit into the local context. In syntropic agroforestry, everything is planted at the same time, be it from seed or from seedling.
You start planting trees and other crops that begin to grow slowly and helping each other. Fast growers begin to diversify the system and produce food at the onset of the systems.
So you've got a continuously self-propagating family of plants that build the soil for you.
The difference between our Tamale and the neighbors is very evident. Our neighbors, the lands are bare, or just one monocrop all the way. If it's dry season, it's just dry that way. But in our system, it's always green, always bushy. In Tamale, we are living in a food forest.
Farmers in Africa are important to the economy, but also very exposed to climate change. Regenerative agriculture is farming practices that bring back destroyed soil in a way that makes soil healthy and productive, restores biodiversity, and improves nutrition. That's the future.
I hope you enjoyed both of those stories. I think they're both incredibly inspirational. First on what you can do with 1 acre of land. It's amazing. So we visited farms in England and Africa, and we've heard from our fantastic panel around why a regenerative food system is so important. So our next two speakers are both local to Finland and are going to give us insight into the role that big business plays, as well as thinking how natural pastures can become not only part of a food system, but a hotspot for biodiversity here in Finland. So I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Ulla Lutasela, and I hope I said that right. I'm really struggling with Finnish surnames, who's the Nordic Sustainability Manager at Nestlé. Welcome, Ulla.
Thank you very much for a warm welcome. And let me just say I'm really excited to be here today, and it was such an inspiring video. I haven't seen it before, so really motivated to be as the next speaker. But let's get started. I think you can see my slides now. Yeah, here they go. So in the next 10 minutes, I'm trying to explain you why Nestlé, a big corporate, is so interested and so much pushing the regenerative agriculture practices. And then secondly, I will give you an example of a program that we are running here locally in Finland. And it's, I think, very obvious why Nestlé, a food producing company, is driving this, is that we really cannot produce sustainable food in the future unless we have sustainable ingredients. If our farmers are not resilient, we are not resilient. So we are in this together, and that's why we are trying to push for the green transformation in the farming systems. Here, just one slide, not more corporate talk, but just to bring you the scale. We are the world's biggest food company. We operate pretty much everywhere in the world. We produce food in almost 80 different countries, and 1 billion products sold every day. So I think this scale and this really brings also responsibility. If we don't actually start to drive it, who would? And we also recognize, and you also, Renier, mentioned in the beginning, that food production is actually a big problem. We have a huge global environmental footprint when we are producing food, but everybody needs to eat. So we do recognize that we are part of the challenge, but the scale, the motivation, and the opportunity really can also actually bring us to be part of the solution. And that's what we are aiming for. We want to be together with other stakeholders driving this together. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a step-by-step process, but we are willing to take all these steps that are needed. 2 years ago, or actually a little bit more, in the beginning of 2020, we made climate commitments like all companies should do, and many have already done, and based on the Science-Based Target Initiative. So we are fully aligned with 1.5 degrees Paris Agreement, and we promise to be net zero by 2050. It means that globally, including all the scopes 1, 2, and 3, we need to halve our emissions by 2030, so this decade already, and then reach the net zero by 2050. And this is a huge workload for us. And what makes it also challenging, that is, when we did our assessment, we realized that almost all our emissions actually are not coming from our own operations. They are coming from our scope 3. And this is the same for all food businesses. Ingredients, the primary production, the agriculture, and our suppliers, they really are responsible for more than 70% of our carbon footprint. So there we were thinking, like, what could we do? How can we influence? How can we engage with the very first part of our value chain? What could we do as a company? And then we launched actually quite an ambitious commitment. It's a bit small, but I will walk you through. But basically we've said that we will invest more than 1 billion euros into regenerative agriculture before 2025. We've also said that it will bring more than 1 million tons of ingredients into our production. And practically this means that we will source more than 50% of our key ingredients through regenerative agriculture methods by 2030. And that's like 7 years from now. And last year, for the first time, we published where we are today based on our internal assessment today. Or 2020, we landed somewhere in 7% of our ingredients today are already coming through regenerative farms. There's still a lot to do if we want to reach 50%, and this will, of course, cover all our key ingredients like coffee, cocoa. So we have quite a lot of projects ongoing at the moment, still quite in a small scale, but piloting and really starting to drive the change. This picture is from Baltic Sea Action Group, and I can see some familiar faces in the audience, and I love this picture because I think it is telling much more than any of us can tell. This is what we are driving. We really want to bring soil back to life. And this picture on the right-hand side, you can actually see that once you are able to create the roots, the microbes, the fungus, the microorganisms around your crops, then actually that kind of land much better protects you against the drought, the flooding, keeps the nutrients in the cycle. So this is what we are aiming at. Also, I believe, and we believe, that we should not create another niche. Organic is somehow, for some reason, standing in the wrong place. It should be up on the pyramid on the top, but we don't want to create another organic. We want to make sure that all the traditional farmers are doing the transition, that all of them are actually implementing these methods, 1, 2, 3, to different extents. But we should move away from traditional farming and really bring the regenerative farming methods on the table for everyone. We are driving projects, like I said, we drive them globally, but here are some examples what we do in Europe. We have projects in UK, in France, in Spain, in Poland, in Switzerland, Germany, and here the next example is from Finland, where I'm the project lead and what we've been now driving for a bit more than almost 2 years, I would say. And the way how it started was like, I was thinking, we have local production here, we actually have local suppliers, we have built the baby food produced in Turku factory, and then we have Juuka factory with Puljonki and Chef and Oscar's brand with bouillons and sauces. So what can we do with our local farmers? And that's when I actually found the Baltic Sea Action Group, and I realized that in Finland we already have such a platform called Carbon Action. And this is a really smart way to work with integrating policymakers, farmers, scientists, companies. And we were very happy to join the platform, and we made a public commitment on actually starting to train our local farmers. And we selected the farmers really carefully. We wanted to make sure that they actually are interested, that we know them personally, we know where they are growing and what they are growing, and then we offered them voluntarily to join the program. And these farmers are mainly producing for our baby food, but also for the culinary products, and it's potatoes, onions, carrots, and parsnip. And let me tell you, we didn't really start the most easy ones. So we were quite pioneers on trying to create regenerative practices for this type of farming, which is very typically monoculture and yeah, you know. So we got these farmers on board. They were very interested to learn more. And this is a very busy slide, so please don't read it, but this illustrates the training program that we were building together with the BSAG. I said, it's not enough just to go and say, this is a theory, go and implement in your farm. The farmers, they need much more. They actually need to understand what really works in my farm. What can I try? What can I test? How can I minimize my risk? Who are the other people who are doing this? Where can I find my networks? So we had a set of different things running throughout the year. We had group sessions just on theory. We had field trips. We brought other experts on board. We had one-to-one sessions where they could really build their own plans. What are they doing in the next 3 to 5 years? And a lot of experts to answer their concerns and their questions. Here you see some really nice pictures. We really went out and about. We met a lot of farmers who are already doing this. We saw how it had impacted their soils, how the water is impacted if it lands on different types of the soil, what happens to the roots. We had microbiological experts explaining how the microecosystem is created in your soil when you actually have a variety of crops growing. So really productive days, really productive program. We still keep going. We are not ready yet. We are doing this year as well. But we've been also very happy to recognize some of our farmers. We have created internal tools where we are sort of saying where they are in the journey. It's not on and off. It's not like today you are a regenerative farmer and tomorrow you are not. It's more a journey. So we see how many things they have implemented in which part of the farm, how they are doing in the future, what is the crop rotation, cover crops, those are quite actually tolerable for this type of farms. So we are very happy, and we've celebrated some of our farmers already reaching at least the level of where you saw the 7% of Nestle farmers being. So at least internally we can say that they are regenerative farmers. But whether that would show on the product someday, that's still an open question mark. But at least we have some pilot farmers who are then, I hope, creating a snowball effect, that when they are positive and they see it works and they are happy and they are developing even further, their neighbors are asking, what are you doing? Why are you so successful? And then they bring more people and more farmers on board. That's all. We don't really have time for questions, but if you want to talk to me, then please come during the coffee break and have a chat. I'm open for all questions. But this is a journey, and we need everybody on board, not just big companies or not just policymakers, not just farmers. We are in the same boat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulla. I mean, I'm always excited to hear how committed Nestle is to this journey, and I'm really looking forward to, and really hope you hit those targets of getting 50% of your key ingredients sourced regeneratively. And we'll come back to the products thing in a bit. So our second speaker, I think you described yourself as a slumbering farmer. So I'd really like to welcome Patricia Wickland, who's been working for the past 20 years with farmers and has been a farmer herself, and working with natural landscapes, and delighted that she's joining us to share some insights on the relationship between food and natural landscapes.
Well, thank you. Very nice to be here. My proof of being a farmer is I got my farmer's boot with me. They were in a natural pasture yesterday, and I just checked that I didn't step on anything, so we're fine for this presentation. So a little bit of contact with many different farmers. I think that I spend this time here with you just talking a little bit about the way we work, what we have learned, and maybe we can share some of our experiences. And then also I want to highlight a little bit of some challenges as well that we have. But my work, I work with many different things, everything from circular economy in the industry to water management, biodiversity questions. But mostly these past years, I've been working directly with farmers and trying to change the way they are approaching things. And I currently work on an island called the Åland Island, which is a very interesting area to be in, because it actually still has a full food system, a complete food system, 30,000 people living on the island, many different agriculture sectors and many different sizes of farms, and still quite an integrated food system. So I have a big mission in keeping that food system working and improving and not losing its strengths. So I'll take some of my learnings from over there as well. We've been talking here, and some of the language here is a lot about something what we have to do with nature and how we have to regenerate nature and how we have to come into that. And I sort of, when I step back and listen to that a little bit, for me it's actually nature knows its job. Nature knows how to circulate. It's us, it's we who have to think about how we manage ourselves, because we have to manage ourselves in a way so that we become circular. And that's much of a bigger topic. So more focus on ourselves and the way we manage ourselves and our economies, and also how we work together with nature. But it's not us outside looking at nature trying to do things, but we are actually part of nature and part of the ecosystems, and we have to realize that role. And especially if we are working with policy and other topics like that, we really have to understand that we are also part of the ecosystem. But here in my job then, so I actually have sort of two jobs. One is within Invenire to run these projects. The other one is a newer one, which is an organization called GENS, where we are really trying to make that connection between nature and the farming systems, and helping farmers on the journey to become the stewards of the land, to be more these key species in the ecosystem. And for me, when I think about, yes, there are all these practices and there are all these examples that we can give and wonderful programs and all that, but then for me the most important tool is actually empowerment, because that's where we have to start. We have to start with the individual. I've always had in all my work that I've done in all the different sectors, when everyone wanting to have a change happening quicker, I always have to come back to the point that change happens one individual at a time. But then comes the question, how can I or someone else work with farmers in a way that I can empower them so that they can quite quickly get into a space where they start learning themselves and finding out the solutions themselves and just being the supportive actor in that. And that is where my focus is currently in my project. So how can I empower people? And a few words about empowerment. I think one important thing is that you share that information and knowledge that you have, but you do it in a way that is actionable. Because for the farmers, they want learnings that they can act on, because that's what they do. The other one is about permission, that you're actually giving them permission to try out and do things the way they want to do it. And connected to that, I think also is about trust, because you really have to create that trust. And also, as you go on, that you don't lose that trust, but you keep that trust, because we can hear from some of these examples, the road might be a bit rocky, but you have to keep that trust going. So I think that are two very important things in what we do. But then also appreciating, and also maybe that with the action, also we have to remember that farmers are superheroes on one thing, and that is to be problem solvers. They know how to solve problems. So also in my projects, when we are trying out new things and so on, I come with the concept, I come with the principles, then I dump the kit, whatever the kit is, whatever the idea is, and the farmers are the one who fix the problem. And then they tell me how they solved it, and then we're both happy in that situation. But it's no use for me to come there and show them the practice of what they should be doing, because they know that better. And the other good thing the farmer has that we have to keep in mind, farmers teach themselves and they teach each other, and especially if there's a little bit of jealousy between two farmers, they will teach each other incredibly fast. So that's another very useful tool to have in this empowerment work that we do. The other thing I think is just to simplify discovery. That is really, really important. So whenever you are showing one of these beautiful new practices or something, just think about ways how to really simplify that discovery part, because that also helps them so quickly forward in what they are doing. But I had sort of two questions to answer when I came here. So one is how do the farmers see themselves in regenerative nature? I think that the farmers that have really understand that they are part of the ecosystem, they also speaking a language that you can quickly recognize, that they say that I'm in conversation with nature, I am working together with nature, I am supporting the ecosystem processes, I am in a dance with nature, this is an art, it's the art of farming. You can start hearing that language that they have. So that is one thing, to get them to that point of actually feeling that they are there. And when they say that, they also quickly come to the other question that I was supposed to ask them, and that is, what is their message to people like you here in the room? And then they say, change policy. Because now, if they are in a dance and it's a beautiful big waltz, you are giving them the school disco steps, like our 2-3 steps to the side when they want to dance with nature. So policy is just stop policy that is actively stopping the farmers from doing their job. I think that is one of the most important things that we have in front of us. How can we stop policy doing that? And I think for me, the answer is that policy understands ecosystems, and policy needs to understand nature, and policy has to start designing solutions that can let the farmers do what they know how to do, because they know how to work with nature, they know what circularity is, and they need space for that. So I think that is one really, really important part in all of this that we are looking at. And then I think sort of one important thing when we're working with this is also, it's a journey for sure, but we have this sort of mission also of creating this upward spiraling farming life that we have in Gens as a motto. And I think it's so encouraging how quickly, when you just get that empowerment happening and policies not stopping them too much, how quickly you get into that space where the farmers are really not regenerating only nature, their economy, but also themselves. And the expressions of that can be incredibly simple. It can be like something like, well, I know that nature has been telling me this for a very long time, but now suddenly I realized that what it was actually saying to me, I acted and it responded immediately in a positive way. Or they might be saying now, it's been a bit dry and so on, I can fix this, I manage, I know how to do this now, I don't have to be afraid, even though it looks like a challenging summer. Or like one of the farmers told me about a week ago, he said, and he's been on the sort of regenerative sort of journey for a longer time, he said he was looking around in his pastures and everything, and he was saying like, wow, have I really done this? Is nature really responding this nicely to me? He was really surprised about all his positive actions. And if we can get that encouragement and that enthusiasm to be among more farmers quicker and together, I think there is a bright future for what we are doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia, and thank you both of you for coming and sharing such great words. So I'm hoping that over the last almost 75 minutes, we've really shared, how the food system can and should be working to help regenerate our natural systems. It's a journey. You've said it's a journey. Everyone said it's a journey. And we don't expect things to happen overnight, but it's certainly a journey that we all need to be on, and every single part of the food value chain needs to be part of that journey. But it's sometimes really hard to know where to start your journey, right? This is a big thing. So how do you know where to start? So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has a way for you to start. And before I go into any details on it, I'd like to share with you a video to showcase the launch of the Big Food Redesign Challenge.
Whether food's fun or functional, colourful or uniform, we know we cannot survive without it. Yet the current food system is a primary driver of biodiversity loss and accounts for a third of global greenhouse gases. It's time to redesign the way we make food. It's time to innovate, to design foods that allow nature to thrive. That's why the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the Sustainable Food Trust are launching the Big Food Redesign Challenge. It aims to inspire the industry to produce food that regenerates nature. The challenge will uncover pathways that allow food businesses to successfully embrace circular design. And it will enable businesses to create space for designers to experiment and test new regenerative design concepts with consumers. The Big Food Redesign Challenge will celebrate and showcase food products created using circular design principles. Food. It gives us what we need to survive. Let's redesign it so nature can thrive. It's time. Join the challenge now.
Launched in Sao Paulo and London, the Big Food Redesign Challenge. And as the video says, this is an opportunity for food companies around the world to really think about how they redesign the food products that we know, love, and find on our supermarket shelves, putting nature at the heart of those design decisions. The challenge is going to run for 18 months. The first 6 months of those will be a supported learning journey where participants will come and join the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and a range of different experts in helping them guide through making different design decisions that really do put nature at the heart of them and enable those farmers, drive those farmers and help support them to actually do what the landscape needs and knowing that they will have somewhere that their produce will go. We will be looking for prototypes to be submitted by the end of October this year. We will be assessing them alongside the Sustainable Food Trust and organizations such as OP2B, One Planet Business Biodiversity, and the World Wildlife Fund, with successful participants being invited to produce their designs over 2024, with the idea being that we will showcase actual food products in supermarkets by the end of 2024 that guaranteed have nature at the heart of their design decisions. We've already secured retail shelf space in a leading UK retailer and are now working to get retail support from around the world. But we are really, really excited that this is an opportunity to really put the food industry on this journey that we've heard so much about today, where the designing of those food products that you just grab off the shelf, you know, when you go into the supermarket, really do have thriving natural ecosystems at the heart of how those ingredients are grown. So transitioning to this food system that regenerates nature is vital. I think everybody's heard that today. You've heard that countless times. And participating in our global challenge, you really will be stepping into a journey to help make this happen. So thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you to all the guest speakers on stage. I really hope you are inspired and will walk away from here thinking about how you can help the food system get on its regenerative journey. Thank you very much.